Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our service today, I'm going to ask if we turn off or silence all cell phones or electronic devices. Thank you very much.
Please rise for the presentation of the flag. Please be seated. We are here to honor Joe and to bring comfort to his widow, Ruby, and to his family, and to everyone who knew him, cared for him, and loved him. I wish to begin the way Jewish funerals have started for the last 2,200 years, and that is with the readings from the book of Psalms. Esa enai el heharim, me'ayin yavo Esri. Esri me'im Adonai, oseh shamayim va'aretz. I will lift up mine eyes unto the mountains. From whence shall my help come? My help cometh from the Lord who made heaven and earth. God will not suffer thy foot to be moved. Heaven that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, heaven that keepeth Israel doth neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall keep thee from all evil, and keep thy soul. The Lord shall guard thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and forever. Those are the words of the 121st Psalm. But perhaps the best known and the most beloved of all the Psalms is the 23rd Psalm. And we have been reciting the words of the 23rd Psalm not for just 2,200 years, but for nearly 2,500 years at times such as this. And each time we offer these words, it is with the hope that they will bring us some measure of comfort and consolation in the face of our loss. So, Ruby, for you, Mark and Michelle, for you, Kristen, for you, and for those family members who are joining us electronically, Hope and Steve from suburban Chicago, and Maurice from San Diego, and grandchildren Stephanie in Atlanta, and Rebecca in Columbus, and Peyton in Madison, and Derek in Indiana, Brianna and Juan in San Diego, and Donovan in New Jersey, and we won't forget Enzo and Maya as well. And for everyone here, I offer these words again in the most familiar translation, and again with the hope that as you hear them, they will bring you a sense of God's presence and comfort in the face of the loss of your dear husband and partner in life, and your father, grandfather, and your children's great-grandfather. Mizmor David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I think everyone, from family to friends to colleagues, to employers to employees, everyone who knew Joe would probably say that phrase from the 23rd Psalm. Goodness and mercy followed him all the days of his life. Not that he wasn't a straight as an arrow businessman, not that he wasn't tough when he had to be, but no doubt with a sense of integrity and goodness and mercy and love for his fellow human beings. Every one of you here must know that. And everyone zooming in from around the country, you not only knew it, you felt it. Because family was his uppermost concern. Surely quickly followed by business and work, with a great work ethic, and even closer by sports, especially if it was a Chicago team. But the world, we were all the beneficiaries of the goodness and mercy of this wonderful man. But in truth, it's not my words that are the most important words for you today. The most important words are your own words. What each of you has to say when you'll call in during the day today, as you have already offered condolence but bid farewell to each other at the end of this service. It's what you have to say, the comfort you bring, and the honor you pay to Joe's life and to his family. Those are the most important words for today and for all the days to come, in order to keep his legacy alive. So it is with great privilege that I welcome before us his son Mark to begin that narrative that will continue for the rest of your lives.
I'm not much of a public speaker. Keep it a little brief, but I just wanted to share some words about my father. My dad was 88 years old when he passed. He was born in 1934. He was born to his mother and father immigrated from Poland between the wars. His father was one of either 11 or 12 children. He had one brother that came with him to Chicago, or came to Chicago, I don't know, at the same time, before World War II. The rest of their family was all decimated in the Holocaust. So my dad was a somewhat private person. He got that from his dad. His parents never spoke about that, not much to their kids, not to us as grandkids. But that was his beginning. So fortunately they left, and that's why I'm here, and my dad was here, and we're here. I do want to speak, my sister, Hope, she is not able to be here in person today. We were able to visit my dad all at the end of May, after his diagnosis. The grandchildren and the family, we all came out. My sister was on dialysis for 4 years due to polycystic kidney disease, hereditary disease she got from our mother. But she, after May, a few weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago, she actually received a kidney transplant. Was doing very well so far, but obviously could not come out. With my dad's diagnosis, he reached out to my sister to say, he knew his time was limited, obviously. They asked if there was any way she could have his kidney on his passing. It's not exactly how it works. But I've just a great relief that he was still around to see her get that as well. I guess, so it was, pancreatic cancer is a horrible thing. My dad had one brother who was 5 years younger than him, Bernard. Bernie looked up to my dad as, someone would as 5 years older. They grew up on the west side of Chicago. They lived in the same building as their uncle, and they had 2 cousins as well. Back then, the west side of Chicago was a very Jewish area. Their parents did not let them play with other kids that weren't Jewish or whatever. This was, of course, during World War II and with Nazis and all of that, so I guess that's to be expected. My dad then joined the Army and put himself through college. And after college, he then went on and completed his master's at Northwestern University in business. So his brother, Bernie, who was 5 years younger, about 3 years ago was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and he passed about 2.5 years ago. So I know my dad knew what was coming. So my dad, he was his younger brother always wanted to follow him around, and so my dad would play sports, so his brother would play sports, and his brother actually took it a little bit more fanatical. That was his life's passion. My dad's loved the Chicago sports teams. They both instilled that in me as well, but my dad loved work. He loved what he did for a living. That was his passion. His family was his passion. Both his kids growing up with him, and then later Ruby and her kids and her family and all of the extended family. He treated all his grandkids the same. He loved them all. He was a very hard worker. You could say a workaholic. I learned some of that work ethic from him, not quite to the extent that he took it, but till his last days, he continued to work consulting. 88 years old. I'm like, I would never, I can't imagine. But that kept him young and active and busy and kept his mind sharp. And that's, all you can wish for anybody is to be able to find their passion and to enjoy waking up every day doing that. So it's, there's not much more I can say on that. But so I guess growing up, like I said, he worked very hard and he traveled a lot, but he made it a priority to be there for his kids. Growing up the way he did, with kind of private parents, whatever, we weren't a I love you family. We didn't say it all the time, but we showed it in our actions. So my dad, I played Little League Baseball. Soccer wasn't a thing for kids back then. But Little League Baseball, I played, despite the height that I got from him. We played basketball, and that was actually my favorite sport as well. So He would come to all of my Little League games. He was traveling. He'd make sure he was home on the weekend to be at the games, sitting out there. He loved to sit out in the sun and sit in the backyard in the summers and read. He had in our house, he had his chair. Nobody ever said, you can't sit there, that's Dad's chair, but that was Joe's chair. So he would sit there, get home from work and read, listen to the radio, listen to Cubs games or Bulls games on the radio. They weren't always on TV back then, some were, some weren't, but I'd be in the other room watching TV when I could. But he would listen, he read for pleasure, he was reading work stuff just to keep up and with things. But he was always there to come to my games. For basketball in 7th and 8th grade, he actually coached my basketball team. We didn't come in first place, but what can we do? Actually, when I was in 3rd grade, we lived in Skokie, Illinois at the time, and they had a father-son free throw contest. And we had a hoop in our backyard on the garage, and I played. My dad rarely ever would shoot. I count on one hand the times I see him actually go out there and shoot the basketball. But he said he would go with me to this because I really wanted to go. And so they had like 2 divisions, one just for the kids, and then one for the kids and their dad. And so I did, for the kids, we shot like 10 free throws, and I made 6 or 7, and that was like 2nd place. I got a little trophy for that. And for the father-son part, they let each of us take 5. So I took my turn, and I made 3, and I thought, okay, that's pretty good. And then my dad stepped up, and all 5. I had seen him shoot basketball. So we won that first place, and anyway, so I guess I got my love for basketball from him too. And I don't know that I can come out after so many years and make 5 for 5, but he did on that day. He was always there. He came in then later with the grandkids. Stephanie is my oldest, our oldest, my wife Michelle, and then it's every 2 years in our side. So then my sister had her daughter Peyton 2 years later. Then we had our next daughter Rebecca, actually 2 years to the day, the same birthday as Peyton. And then Derek was 2.5 years later. So 2 years school-wise. So he came in, we all live in Chicago area still. He came for everybody's high school graduations, came out, and saying pancreatic cancer is a horrible, horrible disease. But the one thing I'm thankful for is he got his diagnosis, so we all had warning. It's insidious. It doesn't get better day to day. So we all were able to come out and see him. He held out for that. Brianna, his granddaughter, came out last Wednesday with her 7-month-old daughter, his great-granddaughter. That was the last scheduled person to come out, and he waited for that, and then Thursday was his first really bad day. He was private, he kept things in. I'm sure he was struggling the last couple months. I'm sure Ruby's quite aware of that. But everybody got to see him and say goodbye. We had that opportunity. With COVID, we hadn't been able to see each other too often. I came out last September because we hadn't seen. I know my dad said that for his 88th birthday, he planned on coming out to Chicago and surprising us. But then he got this diagnosis. And so instead we came to him. And then, so Wednesday night, Brianna came with his great-granddaughter, and then Thursday was his bad day and he passed. So I'm thankful he saw everybody got to see him, and then he didn't have to suffer any longer. I think he was ready. That gives me a lot of comfort. I think in his mind, Ruby wasn't alone. I was worried Ruby would be alone when the day came. Kristen took that day off and just had a feeling to take that day off that day, and Brianna was there with great-granddaughter. So as horrible as it is, it gave us some closure in person. The grandkids aren't here today. It was important that everybody saw him while he was still here with us. So we told them it's not necessary to come out here today. We're live streaming. Obviously, my sister has to have that anyways. He worked hard. He loved his family. The day he died, he loved his first family, his second family. It was all one family. I guess that's all I have to say. But thank you all for being here and honoring him. It means a lot to the family, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Mark, you spoke beautifully. A great tribute to your dad. So I would conclude with only this. Given that story of the basketball competition, perhaps that's one of the greatest insights into his life and the essence of the man. There are challenges in life, not the least of which might be height. But if you love something and you have a passion for it and you're devoted to it and dedicated to the success of it, you let nothing stop you. He let nothing stop him. So I'll leave you with this quote from Albert Einstein. It's the best thing I ever learned from Albert Einstein. Most people think his most important phrase was E equals MC squared. Granted, that's a terrific phrase, but I like this one better. Einstein said, and I quote directly, "Rather than a person of success, be a person of worth." What's the difference? The person of success takes more out of life than he or she puts into life. The person of worth gives more into life than they ever take out of life. Joe was a great success. In business, that was obvious. Just look at the obituary. But he was a great success as a member of a family. He was a great success as a husband, as a partner in life. Ruby, how lucky you are that you found him and he found you. And for 31 years, what you built together. Yeah, you could say it was a successful marriage, but I think everyone would agree it was a worthwhile relationship. A loving, worthwhile relationship. And each of you and your children and grandchildren are the beneficiaries. And what he did for Chemical Bank and the businesses he worked for. He was a person of worth. He was worth way more than he was ever paid because of his standards, his excellence, his devotion to the work ethic, and yes, the success of the endeavor. But his worth was not teaching as he taught the value of money. His greatness was he taught the worth of money. And money is only worthwhile when it can improve, support, make better for those people who can control it. He taught you how to live a decent life, a worthwhile life, a genuine, authentic life. And that was the greatness of the man. 88 years, not bad. And yet, when there's love, it's never enough. Even 88 years is not enough. And this awful disease, it's terrible. But one thing for sure, that cancer conquered his body, but it could not conquer his spirit. Because his spirit continues to shine, and shines in you across the generations. And you'll teach his lessons, and you'll live worthwhile lives, because that's his legacy. May his soul rest in peace, his memory assured, and his legacy of great worth to all who knew him and loved him. Amen. We rise for the El Moleh Rachamim memorial prayer, which you'll hear in both Hebrew and in English. And then I will conclude with the Kaddish. The Kaddish is always recited in its original language, Aramaic. It sounds like Hebrew, but it's not Hebrew, it's the cousin language. And it's never translated. There is, of course, a translation, and if you wish, you can find it on the web. Just Google it. But it's never translated when it is offered. It is always recited in the original, at the end of a funeral, and in memory of a loved one. It says nothing about death, or dying, or grief, or mourning, or sadness. You'll hear it's poetry, which simply says, thank you, God. God, the greatest force in the universe, magnified and sanctified, and everything else those ancient rabbis could possibly say in appreciation to a life well lived, thanking God for the blessing of that life. You'll hear it, and you'll know what it says, even though you won't know its literal translation. So we rise for the El Moleh Rachamim, the memorial prayer, followed by Kaddish. El Moleh Rachamim shochein bamromim, hamtzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina. Lenishmat Yonah Mordechai ben Yehoshua Varela, shahalach lo'olamo, Ba'al harachamim, yitzuror bitzuror hachayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishtavo, v'nomar, Amen. God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest unto your beloved Joe, the son of Saul and Rella, for he has departed from this world. Lord of mercy, bring him into thy presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be thou his possession, and may his repose be peace, peace eternal. Amen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, creator of the universe, for you form us in your image. You nourish and sustain us in your goodness. You cause us to die in accordance with your law, but you have implanted within us immortal life. Blessed are you, O Lord, Judge of truth. Baruch atah Adonai, Dayan ha'emet. And now the Kaddish. Yiskadal v'yiskadash shemei rabo, v'yalma divrach irusei v'yamlich malchusei, v'chaye chon v'yomei chon v'chaye techol beis Yisrael, ba'gala v'zman koriv, v'imoru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabo mevorach leolam u'lalmei olmaya, yisbarach v'yishtabach v'yispa'or v'yisromam v'yisnasei, v'yisador v'yisaleh v'yishalal shemei d'kudesha barichu, li'ela min kol birchasa v'shirasa, tush b'chasa v'nechemasa, da'amiran bi'alma v'imoru. Amen. Yehei shlomo rabo min shomaya v'chayim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imoru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imoru. Amen. May God, who makes peace in the heavens, bring peace to us, to all who mourn, to all Israel, and all the world. And may we say, Amen. Our service here, our tribute, our memorial is concluded. Please be seated.